So this morning, we are welcoming organisations in Cornwall to discuss International Men's Day on Friday, whether it's important and why. We have Luke Keast here in the studio and we will introduce him and his role soon. This piece of content has been curated by Cornwall Voluntary Sector Forum. We've had them on a few times to discuss different areas of work. They convene several alliances. Find out more on the new platform, cornwallvsf.org. First of all, I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves. I'm going to start off with you, Luke, here in the studio with me. Thank you very much for joining me here today.
Hello, no problem.
So, what is your role at the moment?
So I work for Wild Young Parents Project, and I am the lead dads worker, one of 3 dads workers that cover the whole of Cornwall.
Fantastic. Now, before we go any further, I said I was going to do this to you. Come on, question for the nation: main light, bedside lamp, or something else?
No, it's the corner lamp, the standing corner lamp that I picked up at a bargain online.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah.
So I feel like it's got to be something just off, isn't it? Not just something above, it's too glaring.
Yeah, and I quite like it, you know, as soon as it gets dark, draw the curtains and put on a corner lamp. It makes for a nice ambience.
Oh, perfect, lovely. Well, now I'm going to ask our guests who are joining us remotely if they can introduce themselves. Hello to you.
Hello. Hello.
Lovely to have you both on. Could I start with Justin, please? Just give us a bit of an introduction of yourself, please.
Yes, sure. So my name's Justin Ricks. I work for Cornwall Voluntary Sector Forum. I work as an engagement officer, and our organisation's role really is to work with charities, the voluntary community sector, social enterprise sector, to come together and collaborate around important topics and to kind of work together to try and solve issues in the community.
Fantastic. And Thurstan, same question to you. If you could give us a bit of an introduction, please.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. My name's Thurstan CROCKETT. I am the community mentor for A Band of Brothers. We're a mentoring organisation. We do mentoring and rites of passage for young men aged 18 to 25 who are in and out of the criminal justice system and in crisis. So we train and support mentors, and particularly young men, especially in the Penzance and Falmouth areas of Cornwall at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you to all 3 of you for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Now, with Equal Pay Day obviously being tomorrow, we are all aware of the need of International Women's Day to celebrate women's achievements and promote gender parity. Friday is International Men's Day. Some might say men already have a day, 364 days of the year. So do we really need to need International Men's Day? Our guests this morning are here to discuss this. So, Luke, can I start with you? Do we really need an International Men's Day? Big question, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely we need an International Men's Day. You know, if we're trying to create an equal society, then it's not about oppressing one or the other. It's about building each other up. And you know, International Men's Day is a good opportunity to stop and consider what's going on for men at the moment currently, and to wonder and to discuss and to come up with solutions to reach men that, you know, that don't feel equal to anyone.
That's fantastic. I mean, this is obviously a bit of a sensitive subject, and we see a lot of people getting into hotly debated things about this, but that's one thing you just mentioned in there that really caught me, which was there's no need to put anyone down or single anyone out. We want to build each other up in this world, and I think that's right. We want to build everyone up equally. That's what we want at the end of the day. As I ask these questions, please, if anybody wants to chime in, please do. I've got no specific set of people I want to ask these to, so please, if you feel you want to get involved, please do. 3 times more men than women die by suicide, yet fewer men access the psychological therapies. Why do you guys think this is?
If I can chip in there, I think there's something about the societal expectations of men and traditional gender roles that has built up through generations. So, you know, men seen as breadwinners, as strong, in control, and that then puts a pressure on men, so they find it harder to open up. Often, the kind of unemotional side of men means they're less able to see their own symptoms, and men tend to have more harmful coping mechanisms. And by that, I mean drugs and alcohol principally, but it can be absence, it can be leaving home, all kinds of things. And so the pressures, unfortunately, on men are intense.
Absolutely. And may I ask, where did this idea of masculinity come from anyway? Is this something that's built into us?
I can have a go, but I don't want to hog it. So over to you.
I think it comes back to the question about the need for Men's Day. I think perhaps there needs to be more examining of how men need to be positive role models for society, and how actually we can use Men's Day to support all society, really, by looking at how we can be sort of upstanders, not sort of bystanders, to issues around equality, around all kinds of topics around domestic violence, mental health, and as Thurstan's really said, I think men are just less likely to talk about the subject on subjects. So masculinity is part of that. I think that kind of traditional, very particularly in some cultures more than others, where there is a sort of tradition where men have to be strong, don't show weakness, don't talk about things. But I hope that I certainly see in young people today, I think there's a much more better embracement of talking about emotions, and I suppose doing events like this and topics like this on your show is a great way to do that.
Absolutely, and like you said, it's sort of, we don't really talk about this enough. We here at Case, we're always talking about mental health, how we should be talking about it to help ourselves, help each other, across all genders. But we do find with men and masculinity, it comes hand in hand with not talking about these things, just like you said. So does having this day raise awareness of men's mental health?
I'd like to think it. Oh, sorry.
Please, by all means.
Yes, it does, or at least it should take steps into doing that. And it's like Thurstan said, it does feed into the whole fact that are men uncomfortable about speaking about their feelings, about coming forward to help, and that is about challenging what masculinity is. It wasn't until sort of like the late 80s, early 90s that masculinity really became a really talked about topic. And is masculinity being strong, not showing your emotions, or actually is there strength in coming forwards? Is there strength in saying, I'm not okay? Is there strength in saying, how are you? And really meaning it, and being there in the community to challenge what masculinity is.
Absolutely, and I feel it's almost like an opposite effect, isn't it? We want to talk about masculinity and to help with mental health, but it's masculinity that's stopping us talking at the same time. It's almost like a grind that we've got to get past.
It's a perceived masculinity.
Yeah, that's it.
It's sort of like the message is we might be given as children. Don't cry, man up. Be strong.
I hate that
Big
phrase
boys
so
don't
much.
cry.
Yeah.
And then you get a generation of boys that grow into men that don't know how to get in touch with their emotions and their feelings, and then we end up with massive suicide rates amongst men.
It boils over. Absolutely, yeah. And it's horrible to think. So, that's obviously one of the massive knock-on effects. What is the knock-on effect of poor mental health, not just in men, but any individuals?
Can I say, I think it's, like Luke's been saying, really, it's so important. It affects the individual, but it affects their family, it affects all their relationships. It comes across into, as we talked about, being perhaps a positive role model. It's about how they cope with things, demonstrates to their younger relations how to perhaps embrace things. And I think Luke said a great thing there. It's actually stronger to speak up. I think if we could get that message across more, that it's not a sign of weakness to speak up. In fact, it's a sign of strength.
And just coming to the impact, what we experience is that young men, and this applies to young women, that poor mental health means they can lose a sense of purpose and motivation. They can struggle, slip into crisis, desperation, depression, And with young men, what we see in particular is irritability, sudden anger, increased loss of self-control, and then, sometimes an increase in risk-taking and even in aggression. So the symptoms are very tough.
Yeah, and to follow on from that, Thurstan, when all of these things happen and they come to a head, men are often seen as a risk in a community and as a problem. So let's put that over here, and rather we should start thinking about young men as an asset in the community. If the young men don't feel that they have a place in our community, then they're going to feel lost. Yeah,
absolutely. And lovely replies from you all there. I really appreciate hearing it. It's lovely to hear. Obviously, we're talking about men not being able to talk, so it's lovely to see, obviously, everyone here now so open and able to talk about it, which is obviously the start of things, but hopefully this will really get to some people out there who maybe are seeing this. So may I ask now, what support is there in Cornwall for people experiencing any of these mental health difficulties? Because obviously we've heard from Wild Young Parents and a band of brothers. Justin, can I ask you what other support is there?
Yeah, sure. So we work with, as I said, the sort of voluntary community social enterprise sector, and there's a huge number of organisations, and it's great to see Luke here today and Thurstan from their organisations. And I think the great thing is there's a lot of collaboration and working together in Cornwall. So, for example, we organise something we call alliances, which is a coming together of a group of voluntary sector organisations around a theme, and we have a mental health alliance, and within that are some key local organisations. So, to name a few, we have some organisations like Pentreath. We have a lovely organisation called Sea Sanctuary that uses sailing as a method of taking people out onto water, and what is referred to actually as blue therapy, which is an interesting term for getting out into nature. And there's Cornwall Mind. For example, there is a really great event coming up only tomorrow. It's not my event, so I hope you don't mind me plugging it. But there's an event called I Need Someone to Listen. It's National Listening Day tomorrow. It's in Falmouth, and that event is an organisation called Man Down. George's Voice is actually the organiser. And we shouldn't forget about national organisations like the Samaritans as well that are on hand for calls 24/7 as well.
Fantastic, recognising a lot of those actually personally as well. So I want to say quickly thank you obviously to all of you for joining us today. I want to go through perhaps to each of you, if you could remind us again where we can get more information on each of your organisations. Could I start with you, Thurstan?
Yeah, sure. So I work for a band of brothers. We welcome men mature men who are ready and up for mentoring young men, and we welcome referrals for 18 to 25-year-old young men who are in crisis. Get in touch with us, the website, abandofbrothers.org.uk. Contact us on Facebook, WhatsApp me or Facebook me. It's not hard to find Thurstan Crockett.
Fantastic. And Justin, could I pop to you? Where can we find more information?
Yes, so likewise, we welcome people to have a look at our website. So CORNWALL.VSF.org. There you can see lots more information about the alliances that I've mentioned, and featured on there is the Mental Health Alliance and some of the organisations that are within that. I'd also say look at Cornwall Council for a contact for around mental health as well. There is sort of what I call first tier services, which is the health services. But I think the great thing about Luke and Thurstan and how they've demonstrated today, they're really at that grassroots where it's so important to get to people before they perhaps need services. And that's where I'd say it's really important to reach out and talk to others. And actually think about this from a relative perspective. If you know of someone who's experiencing mental health, perhaps find out about these services yourself so you can help someone find out about them.
Definitely, absolutely. And Luke, can I also ask the same question to you? Where can we find out more information?
Yeah, so again on the website, Wild Young Parents Project, .org.uk. And yeah, we work with mums and dads and whole families. Yeah, I encourage you to go onto the website and have a look at the work we're doing. And again, we welcome referrals as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all. Thank all three of you very much for coming on the show. We have a short video now with more information from a band of brothers. Let's take a look.
When the trustees and I were looking at how we scaled a band of brothers, we were really conscious that we wanted to avoid some of the typical pitfalls around what happens when charities grow. How do you keep the same high standards and quality? How do you avoid putting in layer after layer of management supervision, creating this big head office that suddenly, rather than economies of scale, you've created so many diseconomies of scale? Any new instance of a band of brothers, whether it launches in Bradford or Basingstoke, is exactly the same in terms of quality as the original instance in Brighton. And that feels really important to us. We haven't got £1 million of overhead sat in an office somewhere supporting the organisation. We don't need that because of the structure that we've chosen.
One of the reasons I think I probably first got involved and interested in Band of Brothers was my experience trying to craft policy and public policy for what are sometimes described as the wicked issues. The things that you really aren't going to be able to solve with one simple commissioned solution. Youth crime, mental health and physical health, homelessness and what makes people homeless, how we integrate young men particularly into society. We find it really difficult to say, do you know what, that hasn't worked. What we need to do is experiment with some new stuff. And I'm delighted to say, with the benefit of 7 years experience, I think it is really powerful and has a profound impact on not just the young men, but their families and their communities as well.
It's heartbreaking that we live in an age where the expressions of failure as our society are all around us and they're completely unavoidable in daily life. And what's extraordinary for me is how this community is providing the complete opposite, and that is also how our society is capable of healing. A community response to the failures that we do see in our daily life.
With my experience, the young men that we've actually engaged with Band of Brothers, it's been incredibly successful.
I think the Band of Brothers fills a unique space in that, and that's why I wanted to raise the profile of the Band of Brothers in Parliament when I was speaking.
Mr. Speaker, last week I was privileged to attend a Crawley Band of Brothers ceremony where men mentor former young offenders to help them turn their life around. Can my right honourable friend say what further steps his department can take to encourage such voluntary groups to help the rehabilitation of offenders?
Well, I share my honourable friend's enthusiasm for what voluntary groups like a Band of Brothers can do alongside the work of our public sector probation professionals to reduce reoffending further, which is what our reforms are all about.
It's a shame for me that the visibility of the solution is not as high as the visibility of some of the failures that we see, but it is here and it's here nonetheless.
By proving the case now for those types of interventions, that evidence base, that proof of concept, that template being in existence will enable us to take action quicker and with more efficacy than if the sector had laid dormant for the last decade.
I really feel that people a lot of them don't actually have any empathy with what we do. They just see the people that we work with as a lost cause, and maybe there's no hope for them. They just turn their back on them, and they don't understand. They don't understand what we do, and maybe it's because they're frightened of the young people we work with. They see them as dangerous, shut down emotionally. I think what you do is you manage somehow to actually open them up so that they can get rid of a lot of emotional baggage, and then they can come back to us and be a lot more receptive to the type of support that we have to offer them.
It's incredibly moving to see not only how people have been encouraged to form those relationships that will overcome those obstacles, but also the courage it took to share those experiences. I mean, that is an absolutely phenomenal achievement and is a real credit to the Band of Brothers.
Do I wish that more funders of the criminal justice system were prepared to be brave and step into spaces like this? Absolutely. I think it would have a significant impact on a generation of young people, but also on our community as a large.
We are about giving local older men back the responsibility for stewarding the personal, emotional growth of young men in their societies.
Men who are equally passionate, who are equally solid, who are willing to look at themselves, their strengths, and also what might get in the way of really showing up and being potent mentors, potent supporters and advocates for the youth in their community.
We are establishing deep-rooted, sustainable community activity in all of the areas that we're in. Almost every single hour of activity that sustains a Band of Brothers is given by volunteers. We've grown from being a small voluntary organisation in Brighton, turning over about 10-15 grand a year, working with a handful of young men, to now 10 years on, operating in 6 different locations across the UK, launching and developing in a further 4, and turning over in the region of £350,000–400,000 a year. Additionally, we've also got a social franchise model in place, which means that anybody across the UK or potentially even across the world can pick up the principles, the tenets, the methodology that we use and bring it to their community. And that feels extraordinarily exciting. It feels like a really good time to be getting involved with this organisation.
Any grants that we receive actually make a real difference. And I know some people might be sitting there and thinking, well, what could 20 or 30k really do? For starters, the money that we receive goes directly into helping us run the trainings. We have those young men go through an intense weekend and follow up 12-week cycle, which fundamentally helps them to look at all the parts of themselves that might be getting in the way of living the lives that they want to live and attending to the things that have really held them back. That money that's invested in any particular community is investing in that community being there for good, showing up time and time again, not just for this cohort of young men, but for every single cohort that comes after in perpetuity.
We are still in personal touch with the vast majority of the men that were on our first programme. It is important now to fund organisations such as ours that are enabling community-level responses to complex and wicked social problems like young male disaffection and offending.
These are the sorts of organisations and these are the kind of groups which are going to help our community heal. Without groups like Band of Brothers, I simply don't see how our community can overcome some of the challenges that we have at the moment.
Fantastic. A massive thank you again to all of my guests, both in the studio and via remote connections. It was a lovely segment to chat and answered a lot of questions. I've often had a lot of those discussions of, you know, why would men need a day, or people saying, oh, we have a men's day 364 days a year. Well, actually, you know, there is a men's day. It's always an interesting one to see people's face go, oh. It almost feels like it wasn't recognised properly until we started talking about International Women's Day, but I don't know, I feel all these issues really need to be talked about in general and not so, you know, a lot of them don't need to be so genderfied, but at the same time, if this is how it starts, it's perfect to have such groups like these groups there helping people. Absolutely fantastic. Please keep going. You're all fantastic. It was a lovely interview to have.